single-family only zoning, which to me is a policy shift in the right direction. But as we reform zoning codes across America, we have to grapple with the following quandary. How do we reap the benefit of housing development without the cost of housing displacement? Land use reform is a necessary but insufficient condition for affordability. And so, Ms. Bailey, what else can be done to ensure deep affordability in the new housing supply that land use reform would unlock?
Thank you for the question. We can actually create programs that are equitable for the frontline workers who actually risk their very lives to save the economy during COVID-19. Families who, through no fault of their own, have been the hardest hit by COVID. So things like first-generation down payment assistance that I already discussed, support for voucher holders, support for people with disabilities, but also the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act. We could actually build 100,000 new units to help these homeowners who have been hardest hit by the Great Recession that robbed $1 trillion from Black and Latino communities. This is a tax credit subsidy, but what we have to do is make sure fair housing is embedded in it. For the entirety of these United States, what we've done is try to create affordable housing without centering it in fairness. When we center it in fairness, like we did with the American Rescue Plan Act's resources, we actually help the families who need the help the most and who have been the most harmfully impacted by this crisis. Going into this crisis, our families were already struggling because of the devastating impact from the Great Recession. They are not equitably sharing in the recovery, and the Fed's efforts have exacerbated inequality to the point that the Black-white wealth gap now is by $20 trillion added.
To your point, home ownership is the foundation for wealth in our society. And contrary to popular opinion, the largest housing program is not LIHTC, it's not Section 8, it's not Section 9 public housing, it's the mortgage interest deduction by far, which disproportionately benefits wealthier, whiter households. I have a question about homelessness. The size of the homeless population depends on the definition of homelessness that one adopts. So take New York City as an example. If you define the homeless population as those living on the streets or in a shelter, there are more than 60,000 homeless people in New York City. But if you define it more broadly to include those doubling up and tripling up, there are more than 100,000 homeless students in the New York City public school system, not to mention hundreds of thousands more who belong to the rest of the household. So how should we define homelessness federally? And do you have a sense of how much larger the homeless population would be if we were to factor in those who are temporarily and unstably housed? Anyone who can answer that question?
I think we absolutely have to expand the definition, and we actually have to think about some of the solutions that worked and the policies that we created for homeless veterans, because we made a tremendous advancement in helping homeless veterans. And if we provided some of those same innovative approaches for families with children, we could actually increase more resources and support to help those children and those families have more sustainability.
And Mr. Zandi, I have colleagues who romanticize the free market, and the market has its place. The market is a powerful tool, but there are market failures. And in your opinion, do you think the free market is sufficient to create the affordable housing we need at the level of affordability that we need on the scale that we need?
No, I don't. I think the market was significantly impaired in the wake of the housing bust and great financial crisis, and it struggled to get it back together to produce the kind of housing that we need as quickly as we need it. So I do think it is important for lawmakers to focus on ways to try to help address the shortfalls, and thus these ideas around tax credits, and also on grants and other forms of subsidy to try to make it less expensive and cheaper for builders to put up more particularly affordable rental housing units. So no, I don't think we should rely on the market by itself to be able to get us to where we need to go as quickly as we need to get there. This is a problem that's been in the making for over a decade. If we do nothing, it's going to be a problem that we're going to be grappling with for at least another decade or perhaps a generation. So I do think it's really important that lawmakers focus on this and try to address these market failures.
And I'll quickly note, anyone who thinks that we can resolve the affordability crisis without federal investment is living on a different planet. And I'll leave it at that.